Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing Witcher coverage, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Rockamora.
In this episode, we're completing our discussion of the latest Witcher novel, Crossroads of Ravens. Today we're talking about chapters 17 through 23. Let's get into it.
What an ending. I am so excited to talk about this last third of this latest Witcher novel, The Witcher, Crossroads of Ravens. But before we get into the recap and we do our analysis and the whole thing, this is not the end of this latest era of our fantasy chapter-by-chapter discussions.
No,
In fact, we have an announcement to make today that will be going into effect next Friday.
Tee-hee, I'm so excited.
Our next fantasy book, we're not doing chapter by chapter in the traditional way. We're doing an abbreviated way. If you've listened to our Dune episodes, where we've done one episode for each of the Dune books, it's going to be kind of like that. And basically, we're timing it so that the new Game of Thrones show, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is based on a series of novellas from George R. R. Martin, we will be covering the first of those novellas, which is the source material for the first season. We'll be talking about that novella, The Hedge Knight, in its entirety next Friday.
I'm really, really excited for that. This is something we've been thinking about for a long time because we knew we wanted to, at the very least, just on our own, read the book before the show came out. But we were like, oh, it'd be so fun to do it on the show. And then we were also trying to figure out how to do The Witcher. So I'm so glad that we're making this happen. It's going to be really exciting.
And it's timed out pretty well. I've got calendars on my desk. It's a whole mess here at the Second Breakfast Studios. But we timed it out perfectly so that the episode will go live next Friday on The Hedge Knight. And then the show will air just 2 days later on Sunday. So we'll all be on the same page going into the new show, which we have very high hopes for. George R. R. Martin has talked glowingly about it and his great close relationship with the showrunner. I think this one is going to avoid all of the pitfalls that we saw in the last season of House of the Dragon and hopefully bring us back to the glory days.
I really hope so, yeah. And to be clear, we don't have plans to cover the show necessarily. I could see us maybe doing an episode talking about the whole season, but we're not going to do an episode-by-episode discussion like we have done with House of the Dragon
Unless
before.
It's the best thing we've ever done. I don't know. We're going to play it by ear.
House of the Dragon did us dirty, and we got locked into talking about something that was just upsetting.
We did. So we're doing the novella next Friday. Everything else is to be decided.
Yes.
But more importantly, today we are rounding out, for the second time, our Witcher discussions.
Let's do it.
I loved this section so much. So it's only 7 chapters, because the book has 23 chapters instead of 24, but we just chopped it into thirds. This ending is more than I could have hoped for. I'm so happy we came back to this. I love this book so much. I love this series. I love Sapkowski, and I'm so excited to dive into it.
Me too. This is my favorite part of the whole book. I mean, the whole book was great, and this last third is only good if you've read the first 2/3. But
that's true of most books,
right? But it was such a strong ending, and we talked a lot about theorizing what's going to happen to Preston Holt and Geralt, and what's the point of this book. And I've got a lot of big picture questions to dive into today. So, Cam, why don't you give us a recap of what happens in these chapters 17 through 23, so that listeners can be reminded of what's going on.
Look at that bounce pass. Absolutely incredible. So chapter 17 opens with Geralt working with the postman. He's like an armed guard. He's kind of a bodyguard for the mailmen.
They're all buds
across the continent.
It's great.
And he finds out that Preston Holt is being held in this labor camp prison. So to try to fix that problem, Geralt turns himself into that prison, and the prefect, you remember the prefect, is presiding over that prison.
Esteban Trillo de Cunha.
Wow, look, it's Cunha, I believe.
Cunha, thank you.
But thank you, Peter Kenny, for that pronunciation guide. So
helpful.
Geralt confesses to killing Artemon, which is the crime that Preston Holt has falsely confessed to in an effort to protect Geralt. And the prefect immediately rejects Geralt's true confession.
It's no.
Because he doesn't believe that he had motive, he doesn't believe he had credibility, and more importantly, it doesn't serve his ends to have Geralt in prison. And now that they've arrested someone and sentenced them to death, it's going to make them look stupid if they say, we were wrong, actually this other guy did it.
Yes, perfect.
Also, we find out in the course of this chapter that the sorcerers have demanded Holt's execution. So Geralt, really, he can't do anything at this point. Geralt has a brief meeting with Preston Holt. Not much comes of that discussion. They kind of say their goodbyes and talk about sacrifice a little bit. It's bittersweet, but there's not much plot to get into in the conversation. It's just kind of lovely to read. And all of those sorcerers who demanded Preston Holt's execution are attending the execution, and unfortunately, Geralt does as well. And right before Preston Holt dies, he hears this noise that he thinks is a scream from the crowd. He thinks it's a woman fainting or something. And it's actually a woman laughing, like hysterically. Ugh. And that is Artamon's wife.
Lover.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Thank
They
you.
had a torrid, 80-year relationship.
Yeah.
They're not married. They've had, an ongoing affair.
My mistake. They're common law married.
Yes.
If it's 80 years. But yeah.
Well, yeah.
So then he talks with the prefect after the execution, and he says, okay, good doing business with you. We're not going to arrest you for the crime you just confessed to. Get the fuck out of Kaidwin. I never want to see you again.
Yes.
But as a little consolation prize, he gives Geralt a tip of, hey, Preston Holt, your friend, his body is going to be on this wagon out back tomorrow morning. The magicians are going to take that and do whatever the fuck with it. So I'm going to leave that unguarded for a minute. He basically trades Preston Holt's body for Geralt's exile.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He doesn't actually tell him what to do, but he's like, it's just not going to be watched for a while. So just a little tip.
It's a wink and a nudge.
He's very, I love the way he talks. I love that, we'll get into it, but I love the way this character is transformed as you think he's this kind of evil, scheming guy, and he actually turns out to be pretty helpful and friendly.
You think he's simple. And like every other character in the series, he is not.
Yes.
So Geralt questions this. He shouldn't, but he's young and he's impulsive and he's curious. And he says, why are you being nice to me? Not that nice, you just beheaded my friend, but why are you not arresting me for this crime, putting me in this labor camp? And the prefect says, my daughter was just helped by a sorceress named Vry, who we know from the previous installments of this book, and she said you were pretty helpful. So everything's
connected.
tying up into a bow as the book reaches its conclusion. Chapter 18 starts with Geralt burying Preston Holt, and then following Artamon's not-wife, who we will call the Marchioness.
Yes, I never know her name. She's just the Marchioness.
Yes, and that's not Martian like the Matt Damon movie.
No, it's Marchion.
There's a lot of C's and H's. Right, yeah. It's like a Bridgerton spelling.
Marchioness, yeah.
So we follow the Marchioness at a distance, and the narrative really interestingly kind of flits between both of their perspectives. And we jump briefly to Preston Holt's homestead, which Geralt has, Rockamora? And Geralt's visited there a bunch throughout this book. So we jump back to this homestead as it's being auctioned off now that Preston Holt is no longer alive. And there are rumors from the locals that they've seen this ghost around town and kind of sitting on this hill and watching over Rockamora. And then this kind of shadowed figure shows up and says, hey, I'll buy the house. And it's Timur.
Timur Voronov, their agent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their manager, I guess, in their Witcher contracts. Cut over to Geralt, and he's rolling past a monster in the woods, doesn't care at all. He's rushing to the Temple of Melitele, because remember, we figured out last week that Artamon has plans not only to kill Preston Holt, check, but now he wants to wipe out everyone at the Temple of Melitele. So Geralt is rushing there to try to intervene.
Right, because Artamon is, of course, dead, but the Marchioness is going to continue trying to carry out those plans.
Exactly. And we jump to the Temple of Melitele before he arrives. There's a lot of drama being built up here. And we see that they're throwing out some quick prayers, not only for Geralt, but for Preston Holt as well, who they had that kind of uneasy relationship with. Geralt sees some omens as he's rushing towards the Temple of Melitele. He sees a few ravens. Always got to mention the ravens in the recap, just to tie the title into the analysis here. And there are 3 assailants, basically, who are guarding this temple, who Geralt has to get through to defend the priestesses there. They trap him in basically a bear trap, and they brutalize him. They beat him and maim him, and it's blood and guts and slamming his head over and over again.
It's very bad.
It's more brutalized than I think we have ever seen Geralt.
And it's worth noting, these are the 3 riders that Artamon had been working with, and he had been talking to them, and Geralt overheard their conversation. Now they're working with the Marchioness. It's this one woman and 2 men.
Right, and they bring what's left of Geralt to the Marchioness. And that's not the end of their plan. That's just the next step in their plan. So now they pretend that they've just found Geralt broken down and damaged in the woods, and they bring him to the Temple of Melitele, knock on the door, and beg for aid. Oh, won't you help our friend? He's been hurt. Geralt has that little summoning amulet thing that Vry gave him in the last section that I made sure to bookmark in in the recap here.
Well done.
I am absolutely vindicated in that, because he rubs the amulet 3 times, and Vry, who's inside the temple, realizes, oh, they're doing, what's the thing from the Odyssey?
Oh, the Trojan horse?
The Trojan horse. I wanted Tristan to punch his computer screen for a second.
It's a Trojan horse!
What's the thing where they hide in the wicker chair?
Trojan horse, yeah.
Yes. So Vry sees through this ruse. The Temple of Melitele launches some counter-offensive, and Geralt kind of fades out of consciousness as the chapter ends. The next chapter is this really surreal, weavy, wavy, interesting... Basically, Geralt is barely conscious, and the chapter sort of devolves into just fragments of dialogue as he's being treated by the priestesses. They use a lot of different medicinal methods, and eventually they have to turn to magic, because it looks like he's just completely annihilated. The next chapter has a 6-month time jump, which I think is one of the first times we've ever really done that in this series.
We've jumped through like 3 or 4 months, never 6, though. It's quite a lot.
And Geralt, even 6 months later, is still in this extended, agonizing recovery. Mm-hmm. And he takes stock of where he is and what he has left now. Obviously, Preston Holt is gone. He's now been exiled from Kaedwen. His elixirs are all gone. Roach is gone. His medallion is gone. And both of his swords have been stolen.
He's got nothing.
He's got nothing except the beautiful hair on his head.
He still does have that.
And basically, Nenneke shows up and recaps what has happened in the last few months. And we find out that Merceau, who was that lady who you decided was pretty...
the commandant, yes.
The commandant who you decided was pretty. She basically visited the temple and protected it while Geralt was recovering. And Nenneke kind of comments, hey, isn't it nice that all these people are paying back these favors that you've... they're neatly closing the circle on all of these relationships you've formed over the course of this book. She also says, hey, you got to be careful around sorceresses. I can tell you've got a weakness for this type of lady. Don't do that.
That's so funny to me. I loved that moment.
And then she shares some lore. She's learned some stuff. She's talked to some people, and now she can connect the dots on what has happened here and why he was almost slaughtered by these people. So basically, we find out here that Artemon was the one who wrote the Monstrum, that anti-Witcher pamphlet thing that Geralt found at Preston Holt's house.
Which is the thing that incited the attack on Kaer Morhen in 1194.
Right. And we also find out that it was Artemon, and I guess his not-wife, who funded and provoked that attack on Kaer Morhen that Preston Holt was kind of part of and then kind of tried to run away from. And that in his ensuing revenge campaign, where he tried to chase down and slaughter everyone who was responsible for that attack, one of the people he killed was Artemon's son.
Yes.
Who obviously is also the Marchioness's son. Mm-hmm. So Nenneke says, hey, I see you look angry and you want to go kill the Marchioness and these other 3 people. But right now you are at a crossroads. Geralt kind of jumps out of bed and limps over to the door and departs the temple as Nenneke once again just earmarks it for the audience, saying, I am warning you against a revenge campaign, but then she also tells him to kill them. Yeah. She's encouraging it and warning him against it. It's a beautiful kind of friction here. Mm-hmm. Next chapter, 21, starts with Geralt arriving at Preston Holt's homestead. Timur Voronov is there with his family. They discuss anti-Witcher prejudice for a minute, and he gives Geralt some of Preston Holt's effects. He gives him his swords and medallion, which Preston Holt wanted to be sent back to Kaer Morhen. And Geralt says, sure, I'll do that, but I need to borrow the swords first. And we find out, we get another little recap from Timur Voronov, and he says that the Marchioness fired those 3 people, those 3 assassins, assailants who brutalized Geralt and were part of Artemon's hunting party.
And of course failed to get into the temple.
Right. And she now denies ever knowing them, any involvement with them or any of those attacks. Geralt says, okay, I got a job to do, and I don't really need an agent anymore. Timur Voronov seems to be kind of retired out of that game anyway, so Geralt severs that business connection with Timur Voronov. He keeps the swords, he leaves Rockamora, and he reads the final letter that Timur Voronov gives him that Preston Holt has written, the little goodbye letter. Mm-hmm. And this is where we get some really cool reveals. These are kind of the secrets that drive a novel like this. We find out, and I have to take 1 second to breach protocol. In my notes, I have here, Maggie was completely right in her suspicion of Preston Holt's motivations and the convenient placement of the monster.
I felt very good about all of that, I gotta say.
I don't think you've ever had a more slam dunk vindication in a theory that I immediately shut down.
You were like, no, he's just sick.
No,
and I was like,
I said you've watched Breaking Bad too many times, which you have. But in this case, that did serve your analysis. So we find out that Preston Holt has known forever that Artemon was the one who wrote that Monstrum pamphlet, and that he only interfered with that. Remember that Barry Lyndon scene of Geralt being arrested a couple times,
Yep.
and Preston Holt swoops in and saves him. He only ever saved Geralt, and then in the ensuing months trained up Geralt so that Geralt would kill Artemon. He was giving him all of the tools so that this younger, more agile Witcher could go kill this magician that he hated.
it was very Dumbledore coded. It was
Yes,
very
and he
interesting.
planted that book, that Monstrum book, so that Geralt would find it, get pissed, and act on that aggression.
Mm-hmm.
But in the ensuing months, he felt, I don't know why I'm saying it ensuing so much this episode. My apologies.
It's because you're very academic and smart.
Sure, that's not endearing. In the following months, Preston Holt felt guilt about setting up Geralt like this, using him like this, and attempted to kind of back out of that plan and put the kibosh on the whole thing, which is why he weirdly sent him away from Rockamora and said, I think when the winter ends, you should go away now. He did that because he was feeling bad. And also, that's why he then confessed, because he thinks, in his view, he did, in effect, kill Artemon by creating this
This
hitman
monster.
to kill Artemon for him.
Yeah.
Since he set those wheels in motion, he doesn't see that confession as illegitimate. Geralt rolls on, feeling kind of betrayed and uneasy about the whole thing, and he passes the wedding that he helped to send into effect between those warring families.
Yes.
Remember, he helped them escape, and the kids were going off to get married. We cut away to the Marchioness, and it's her kind of fiddling with Geralt's medallion, which of course she would have gotten after they brutalized him. And then we cut to this scene later that night, and we're seeing this from the Marchioness's perspective. So it seems surreal. It seems like she's having this nightmare of Geralt showing up with the cat eyes, hopped up on elixirs, taking back the medallion. And this is presented as a nightmare. It's presented as not being real. But we know from the rest of the saga that he does get his medallion back. So I think we have to read it as literal, even though the
Certainly.
narrative presents it as somewhat surreal. And basically, that nightmare freaks her out so much, and she's so fucking old, that she just dies.
Yeah. Well, and it makes
She
sense
dies.
too because she had just taken this sleeping draft that's like full of sleeping pills and alcohol and all kinds of stuff, and so she's in a very like hazy, dreamlike state. So it makes sense that it was written like that. So I loved this scene; it was so cool.
Absolutely beautiful. So the last two chapters here. We go back to Geralt, and he's gathering as much info as he can on these three attackers, the only people left on his Arya Stark kill list.
Yeah.
And I love the way this chapter starts, just as a digression here, because Sapkowski spends a minute or two describing the places Geralt is hiding out in. And it's all of these taverns and pubs and kind of seedy underworld places. It's a lot like the cantina in Star Wars.
Yeah,
Basically, it's
yeah.
where not great people wait for not great jobs to pop up. And the smell of them. I almost wrote in my notes, Geralt hangs out in a stinky tavern.
That's pretty much what it is.
And he's watching for all of these bodyguard job postings, these security jobs that trained assassins or bodyguards, like those three attackers, would show up for. He finds one, kills him immediately. Finds the second one, who sees that Geralt means business and offers him a deal. Geralt rejects it immediately. And during the ensuing duel, where this guy's way more powerful than Geralt imagined, he remembers the weird drawings on the back of that final letter from Preston Holt, which were diagrams basically showing him how to win this fight. So he does that and kills the guy, wins the duel. The final chapter is Geralt hunting down that third attacker. And
The girl.
We're by the waterfront now, and he passes this group of children. There's a melancholic moment there. He sees the attacker see him and grab a horse and skedaddle. It's very much the Roadrunner with the legs moving
Yes,
too fast,
it's
trying to
very
flee
funny.
from Geralt. And in the distance, he sees this big, freaky, tentacled, fucked up monster climbing down the terrace. He remembers, hey, I just saw all those nice kids. He hears a raven overhead, and he immediately forgets about the attacker, allows her to escape, and goes after the monster, drawing Preston Holt's blade to protect the children.
It's so cool. It's so good. And that's where it ends. Like, that's the end of the book. And I'm so excited to talk about that. Before we talk about that, listener, first of all, Cam, thank you very much for that recap. I know it was a lot of work.
Sure.
Speaking of Cam and supporting his work and my work and our collective work, may I recommend you check out our Patreon? Our Patreon's a fun place to be. It's $2 a month. And over on the Patreon, we release 2 new bonus episodes every single month. And of course, by joining the Patreon, you can get access to those, plus the whole back catalog of previously released bonus episodes. We talk about all kinds of things over there. We talk about movies and books and TV and
a chapter by chapter of Fire and Blood, the history of Westeros, which is the source material for House of the Dragon.
Yeah, speaking of George R. R. Martin.
Some of the most deep dive analytical work we've ever done.
Yeah, so go check out the Patreon if it's interesting to you. Thank you very much for your support. Okay, let's dive into this discussion. I
want to reiterate the mea culpa of you being completely right about Preston Holt's motivations.
He turned out to be, he started as and ended up being such an interesting character. And I guess, like, here's a question that I didn't write in my notes, but I'm now thinking, what do you think about him? Like, do you understand what he was doing? Do you agree with his motivations? Like, what's sort of like our net positive or net negative in this situation?
I think Sapkowski somehow, again, managed to thread the needle here, where we need someone who is absolutely essential and formative for Geralt of Rivia, who is also never really mentioned again. Mm-hmm. And I think the way he muddies the waters here by showing that, yes, he was a good mentor and he kind of saved him at the end with this beautiful heroic sacrifice. But he also lied to him the whole time and set him up and kind of fucked him over and was never really who he said he was. I think that is muddy and complex enough where Geralt's not going to drunkenly, fawningly reminisce over this lost father figure.
Right.
He wraps it up in a bow such that their relationship is private and messy. And I can see in the ensuing... There's that fucking word again. I can see in the following books how Geralt... He remembers this model of how to mentor a naive, funky young witcher like Ciri, and how he tries to learn from that and be more honest with Ciri than Preston Holt was with him. I can see him referencing that example in his head, but not talking about it to her. So I think he became, for me, an essential character for this series, but I totally get why he's not in the forefront of the narrative as we move forward.
Me too, because I think, because he is probably going to harbor some, anger and resentment towards Preston Holt forever, which makes him maybe not want to speak about him. But I wonder if there's also an element of, like, not embarrassment per se, but just like vulnerability, because Geralt is incredibly young and vulnerable with Preston Holt. We see him like talking about, like opening up about, this is where I'm failing, or these are my weaknesses, or these are my fears. And he doesn't really do that with anybody else. Like maybe Yennefer, but not
maybe Vesemir.
Yeah, but like not very much. And so I could also see him not wanting to think about Preston Holt because it makes him think about his own vulnerability, but also not want to talk about it with other people because he doesn't want to reveal how vulnerable he once was. And not that I think older Geralt is like this big macho guy who doesn't approve of vulnerability. I just think he wants to be strong for somebody like Ciri, and he wants to be, he wants to impress somebody like Yennefer. So I think you're right. Everything we're saying, I think, helps me understand why we've never heard of this guy in the main saga.
I think most of Geralt's warmth and vulnerability, like if he goes through a shitty adventure with Dandelion and they both end up penniless and completely fucked over, I think he's fine being open and vulnerable about that with Dandelion.
Yes.
Because they just went through it.
They did it together, yeah.
I think there are very few characters where Geralt is comfortable revisiting old vulnerabilities that the other person wasn't present for.
Exactly.
Cracking open the book of, hey, here's my sad origin story.
Yeah, he's not
trauma
like to do that. Yeah, exactly.
But he is open if we go through something shitty together.
Mm-hmm,
it's an interesting, because the reason I laid out how much I liked Geralt hanging out in the stinky taverns is that he is leaning back into the shadows. Mm. He's very much doing the Strider thing that we love so much from that Aragorn reveal with the pipe and the hoodie, and he's doing the whole thing. But Geralt has never been Aragorn. I don't really think there's that much crossover. Yes, they're both kind of on their own, and they're big strapping guys, and they're incredibly gifted in combat, but he's not this fated king. Mm-mm. He's very much living on the margins, and everything he does, every time he has a choice presented to him, he takes the one that will keep him in poverty.
Yes.
Where he's in the morally correct position and hated by society, penniless and ostracized. Mm-hmm. So I don't see a Strider thing into him, but I like that clarification and pivot. So many of these later Witcher books I can only see through the lens of the series has blown up so much, with the Witcher games being some of the most beloved and successful RPGs of all time, with the show bringing this series to previously unheard of level of cultural saturation, the anime movies that they're doing, there is this big perception of the series, and I think most of those perceptions, like we talked about in the first episode of this latest series, are misinformed. And I think it's easy to graft a character like Strider onto Geralt. So I'm seeing these later books as kind of quiet clarifications of character and theme, and I think Sapkowski is correcting the record here about who his Geralt of Rivia is.
I totally agree, and I think Preston Holt also serves that function, because I think apart from being this mentor that Geralt learns from, he also, I think Preston Holt is sort of a version of who Geralt could have become in like a bad way, because we learned that even like Preston Holt has been this helpful mentor and everything, but also he's done these pretty shady, conniving, and maybe a little bit evil things of all the, killing all these people and tricking Geralt into killing somebody. And he ultimately regrets it and tells Geralt so, and says that like, I was trying to prevent you from becoming a killer like me, and lo and behold, that's what I made. And so I think Preston is sort of this thing that Geralt could have become if he had gone too far, if he had, tried to just kill everybody who he disagreed with or who was causing problems. And so I think that us seeing that counterexample of like, Geralt's not, this Aragorn hero, but he's also not this guy who just kills people for fun. Like, he's much more complicated and more interesting than that. So I like Preston Holt as sort of this counterexample.
I'm very happy with where we leave Preston Holt here. I want to revisit another one of these kind of grindstone theories that we've had through this book, and it's been me invoking the Faustian framework of the specifically Faustian bargains, which really is a part of the Faust mythos that we don't talk about that much. It's usually not about the bargains. It's usually about other things.
That's true, yeah.
So I want to go back to that, because the idea that you threw out there in the first of these 3 episodes about thesis statements, I kept thinking about that in the... I almost said fucking ensuing again.
Count them down below,
in the
listener.
Subsequent, I'll always find another fucking word. You watch me. In the subsequent weeks, no, I'm totally off now. I'm flabbergasted.
Why don't you start over?
The Faustian bargain grindstone that has persisted throughout Crossroads of Ravens gets a kind of thesis statement finale. Sapkowski sees the thing, names the thing, and wraps it up in a bow with a couple final, fun, flirtatious reversals. And the quote that I just memorized and immediately wrote into my notes was, "Everyone knows when 2 people make a bet, one is foolish and the other dishonest."
I loved that phrase. I was hoping you were going to talk about it.
And this, I think this is his sort of thesis on Faustian bargains, is that they're all fucking lies. They're all manipulation. It doesn't really matter if there's a supernatural thing involved in all. It is kind of meat and potatoes, power dynamics. It's scheming. It's evil. There's this stink, as we talked about last week, to all of these pseudo-Faustian bargains. And later in this third of the book, I think he hits these ideas again, where he gives us a couple more bargains that are so grim and meager that I think they further kind of expose his angle on the Faustian framework here.
Okay.
When the prefect trades Geralt's exile for Preston Holt's body, there's no one winning in that bargain. There's nothing supernatural, but there's also really nothing to be gained.
Yeah, I mean, Geralt gets the opportunity to let Preston Holt be buried rather than have his body be experimented on.
But he showed up to the prison camp to help save Preston Holt, not bury his headless body.
Yeah, it's a very like grim reward.
And then when Timur Varnov shows up to Rockamora to buy his friend and ex-employee's house, that struck me as really fucking grim.
Yeah, it's like on the one hand, I'm glad that somebody who, liked and cared about Preston gets his home. On the other, it's like, oh.
But
okay.
it's very much, he won't need them where he's
going. Yeah.
It's scrapping him for parts. It's a vulture-ish kind of impulse.
It's the Sackville Baggins is raiding Bilbo's home.
And in the same way we've just sort of settled Preston Holt's character, I think this one action defines Timur Varnov for me, and his whole business being these kind of shitty, manipulative Faustian bargains. The same way we talked about, why the fuck is this guy getting a commission for doing nothing while his penniless employees fight dragons and then don't get paid?
Right.
But there's also this revelation that you totally clocked in the last discussion of Preston Holt's entire proposition to Geralt, the initial Faustian bargain that began this whole grindstone. It was always a scheme. It was always a lie. And I think that puts Preston Holt almost on the same condemnable footing as Artemon, where we find out Artemon, when he talks to Geralt last chapter, when we meet him and kill him in the same chapter, and he says, hey, I want to do some Dr. Frankenstein experiments on you, and if you let me do that and I find out all your Witcher secrets, I'll give you legal immunity. And then immediately Geralt spies on him and he does that. Blah, blah, blah. And we find out that Artemon is completely lying and he just wants to kill him and rip him apart. This puts Preston Holt on that footing where the initial bargain was kind of shitty. And then we find out it was bullshit all along. So I think this is a bit of a narrative condemnation of Preston Holt, but very much also of this transactional bargaining that we're seeing between characters, where these bargains, they're not deals. They're not negotiations. They're not business arrangements. They're fucking traps. And this third of the book has such an interesting prevalence of traps.
I was going to say that bear trap is a literal trap.
Yes, Geralt is caught in a trap, and then like 8 other traps that like break his skull and fuck up his legs and fingers, and to the point that 6 months isn't enough to heal a magical being.
Right.
And then, of course, his attackers use another trap to try to infiltrate the temple.
Yes.
So I think almost devolving, we're slowly kind of a la carte ripping apart what a Faustian bargain is. And after we remove the magic, after we remove the power imbalance and all of these elements, what we're left with is a fucking bear trap. I think that's a beautiful kind of distillation of this idea that Sapkowski has piecemealed across this novel.
Yeah, I like that because it's not these like special divine traps. It's these like very human, just evil schemes. It's not these important divine deals. It's horrible people doing horrible things. I wonder if the thing that keeps these Faustian bargains, for lack of a better word, like in this way, in this story, is the people involved in them. Because the thing that, one of the other sort of running thesis statements of this whole story, not just this book, but the whole saga, is humans being monstrous. And you even said last week, Witchers being more human. So I wonder if part of it is also the people involved and the people making the deals, because I also thought about Faustus.
Ooh.
And I realized we were missing a really key component of the Faustus idea. And that's partly because we're not Polish, but also because we haven't read the saga in a long time. But there was, before every chapter, there is a little quotation that kind of frames the chapter. Maybe it's a quote from scripture, or it's from Paradise Lost, or it's from the Monstrum Witcher text. Like sometimes it's real text, sometimes it's fictional. But one of those was the law of surprise.
Yes.
Which I did a little, not a deep dive, I did a miniature dive into the law of surprise. If you remember from the original saga, that was what caused Geralt to have to adopt Ciri, is that he sort of invoked the law of surprise, which kind of says that which you have at home but know not about will become mine if you do this thing I say that we need to do. Like that's sort of the prize. The law of surprise is actually a very common thing in Slavic mythology. I didn't realize that, and even in reading the whole Witcher saga, neither of us picked up on that, but I did a little bit of...
We didn't become more Slavic as
right.
we read the book.
But in like Polish, Ukrainian, Russian mythology, the law of surprise is very common. Think about like Rumpelstiltskin. His like price for spending the gold is that I get your firstborn. And so it's that kind of thing. And so one thing I read was that in Slavic mythology, the law of surprise was originally a form of payment for a devil's service. And in that little story that we get right before one of those chapters, it's basically this merchant who's wandering through the woods and he falls into trouble, and this little devil creature comes by and says, like, I'll help you, but only if that what you have at home but know not about will become mine. And so for Polish mythology, for Sapkowski's world, for the world of The Witcher, which is heavily based in Slavic mythology, but also other Western European mythology too, the main thing is it's not a Faustus story. It's law of surprise. Rather than it being a bargain between, a Faustus character and the devil, where it's, the devil is going to give you this divine knowledge and in return I get your soul. Instead, it's I'm the devil character, I'm going to give you something, and in return I have to take this thing. Maybe it's your firstborn child, maybe it's something else that you don't know that you have.
It's a blank check.
Exactly. And what's interesting about the law of surprise in the world of The Witcher specifically is that in using it, Sapkowski's sort of flipping the Faustus idea upside down multiple times. Because in the main saga,
the reversals, yeah.
In the main saga, Geralt takes the role of the devil or the evil spirit in human form, and he wins Ciri. The prize that he gets is Ciri, and so that puts Geralt in the monstrous devil role. And you even talked last week, and maybe the week before, about how Geralt could occupy that Mephistopheles demon role. But here, in this story, in this book, Ciri's not a thing. Geralt hasn't received her yet. He hasn't, adopted her. He's not involved in that deal. But we talked a lot about, is Geralt potentially a Faustus or Prometheus or Frankenstein character where he is doing too much, taking too much divine knowledge? Is he, by having these Witcher abilities, etc., becoming this divine creature? And so if he is, what is it that he's in danger of losing? Because it's not his soul, because in the law of surprise, it's not about your soul. It's about some other thing that you have to give up. And so I think, last week I pointed to Geralt calling Prometheus a hero and misunderstanding that myth and thinking that stealing fire from the gods is a good thing, and not understanding that, no, Prometheus was then punished for eternity for doing that. And so I think what Geralt is sort of in danger of losing here is, I guess, his humanity, because if he becomes this overpowered magical killing machine and kills everybody who's a problem, he then is losing his humanity, and he's then entering into those gritty, evil trap, quote unquote deals that you just laid out.
So every time he resists the siren call of self-interest that fuels everyone else in this series, he's preserving that humanity.
Yes, exactly.
That
so
works.
He's kind of refusing to take those deals. And what's even more interesting is that if we jump forward to the main saga, when Geralt is the devil creature in the role, in that deal, because he gets Ciri as the prize, in that whole situation, Ciri is the thing that keeps Geralt the most human. He's the most human when he is interacting with Ciri and his raising and mentoring of Ciri. That is what keeps him, I think, human above all else. So even though he is this devil monster role, he's actually the most human of everybody in the story. And he, even though he is enacting the deal, he also is the most human. And then at the very end, spoilers for the end of The Witcher, Geralt dies a very human, like, man's
principled death.
And not a divine magical death. He dies as a human being.
And he doesn't die like Preston, or he doesn't run away like Preston Holt.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's not this big heroic thing. I mean, it's heroic in a way.
He dies for a very small principle. He doesn't die saving the world.
Right.
He dies fighting with his friends during this local pogrom.
Yes. And so it's this repeated, continuous flipping of law of surprise Faustus, and like I just found that
interesting.
I just felt like very silly that we hadn't talked about law of surprise, because I think that is the Polish Faustus story, is the law of surprise.
I love that. I cut that from the recap just because it was a little extraneous, relevant to the rest of the plot, but I love that because I didn't totally process or understand invoking or reintroducing the law of surprise thing, but that's beautiful.
I had not. I was like, so should I be thinking about Ciri? But I think it's more than that, and I don't mean to suggest that Sapkowski hasn't read Faustus or Frankenstein. I'm sure. I mean, the man is so well read, but I think when he's reading something like Dr. Faustus, he's going to be thinking about the law of surprise.
I mean, this is also part of the argument I always make about Faustus, is that it's not about having read the source text. It is something that is so ingrained and influential in just the art of storytelling that you don't need to you don't need to know the name Christopher Marlowe to make a fantastic Faust fable.
Yeah.
Most of the ones we talk about, I almost guarantee that they're not intentionally aping that framework, but I think it's that baked in and that successful within the last 400 years of storytelling that it's there whether you like it or not. But yeah, I think the law of surprise is a fantastic wrinkle and sort of response to that invocation. That's very cool.
It was very fun to think
great.
about.
I want to go back to one of our grindstones from our previous Witcher discussions, when we went through every book chapter by chapter, and we were constantly arguing against and wrestling with the genre tag that has been stuck on the Witcher series. I want to talk about Grimdark.
Ooh, okay.
Because I think this book is the final nail in the coffin, Sapkowski's final word on the franchise's misclassification as being grimdark.
Okay.
And I want to start with trying to define that term, which I think is always important when you get into these sort of discussions.
Of course, because everybody has their own idea about what grimdark might mean.
When I think of that phrase, and I want you to help me here, when I think of that phrase, I think of fictional worlds that are bitter and cynical and hopeless and in some way beyond saving. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, very counter to the more heroic classic Tolkienian fantasy where there's good and there's evil and there's going to be a battle between those two forces and good ultimately triumphs.
Right, an aspirational world. And I
Right.
think grimdark is fundamentally hopeless and pessimistic.
And I think the best example of that is A Song of Ice and Fire, where all of your characters have varying degrees of maybe not evil, but darkness and bad tendencies in them that have to come out in order to survive and move through the grimdark world that they exist in.
And the important difference between this and Song of Ice and Fire is that when people do the right thing, when they try to be a good person, nothing in that world rewards them for that.
Ned Stark.
It's usually punished brutally. It's usually fatal when you do the right thing in George R. R. Martin's fantasy.
And it's not it's not black and white, because you have somebody like Jon Snow who is quite heroic but also messy in his own way and
dies a few times.
Right. But it's ultimately it's a dark, grim world, as the name suggests, and being a hero is not going to get you very far.
Right. And I think it's important to go beyond those two words and really explore what that means. Because my takeaway from this, what is it, the 10th novel in this series now?
Something like that, yeah.
As ever, the moral of this Witcher book, this dark, edgy Witcher book, is that you should do good things for their own sake. Without any expectation of, and this is where we can rope in Tolkien as well, without any expectation of divine reward, that you're not doing it because God said to do it and you want to go to heaven, which is in itself a form of acting out of self-interest.
Yep.
Also, you're not doing it you're not doing it out of any expectation of monetary reward, because we see how Geralt is principally penniless for this entire series.
He saves the postmaster and refuses payment because there was no agreement struck. Yeah.
And if anything, doing good things for their own sake is more virtuous because there is no other motivation, because it is not about self-interest. It is in the face of self-interest, divine reward or monetary reward. And I think it's too simple when we talk about this series being this many-book treatise about self-interest. It's not just a diatribe against the motivation of self-interest. I think there is something aspirational and inspirational about this world. Crossroads of Ravens, for me, is a story of how self-interest can be overcome and defeated. If you look at the way everything wraps up in this final third of the book, Geralt gets this ultimate moral vindication that for me, and maybe it's just because we're recording this in January, but it very much recalled the ending of It's a Wonderful Life, where the way Sapkowski wraps this thing up into a bow, everyone Geralt has helped in the course of this book rallies around him when he's at his lowest. We see Merceau patrolling around the temple. We see the priestesses nursing him back to health. We see he calls in that debt with Vry, and she runs to his aid.
Immediately.
She's like the one who helps him not die. The ending of It's a Wonderful Life is the most life-affirming ending ever written. And that's exactly the ending we're getting at the end of this quote-unquote grimdark story.
Yes.
And I think this is my takeaway from this book and this series as a whole. The world is bad, and I think that's usually where the grimdark, misdirection happens. The world is bad, yes, but people are good. Or maybe more specifically, people can be good. Maybe even more precisely, the world is bad, but that doesn't mean people have to be bad too.
Yes.
I think that is the message of this series. And there's nothing about that message that is grimdark.
I'm very with you. And I think you're right. I think this book serves to clarify that beyond what the rest of the books in the saga do. Not that message isn't there in the rest of the saga, because it is, but it became all the more clear here. I was thinking about that. Like, one of my key questions was, what is it that Geralt learns in this book? Because on the one hand, he learns how to be a better Witcher. He learns how to fight better. He learns how to make deals better. He learns how to navigate and read people better. But that's not really the point. That's, that's just, I don't know, cherries or whatever on top. There are other phrases. I don't know. But
there's no other fruit you put on it. It is cherries. You're correct.
Okay, great. chocolate sprinkles. I don't know. But yes, you're right. It's doing good things for the sake of it, because you sort of see him figure that out over the course of the book, but especially near this ending bit, because we talked about thesis statements, and like one of the things that came up last week and continues into this week is that thing that the blacksmith said, which was kind of like stay in your lane, where the blacksmith has his duty, the witcher's duty is to kill monsters, the justice thing is the duty of the Shire Reeve, blah, blah, blah. And Geralt tries to follow that, but can't, because he gets too personally wrapped up. So rather than letting the law deal with Artemon, he says, no, I'm going to kill Artemon. But of course, even though like you can look at that as that was probably the right call, Preston Holt doesn't see it that way. And ultimately, Geralt stops seeing it that way, because it just meant that he killed somebody in cold blood. And he does the same thing with the Marchioness. And he does the same thing with the two male riders who were working for Artemon and the Marchioness. And so just staying in your lane doesn't end up working for Geralt. So it's not just like do good things for the sake of staying in your lane. That doesn't really work. Another example, personal interest and safety. What's his name? I wrote ETC. The prefect, Esteban Trillo. He tries to get Geralt.
Wait, isn't there another name there?
Esteban Trillo. What do you mean?
I thought he had other names.
No,
there's something with a C at the end.
Yeah, Kuna. Esteban. I'm not gonna listen. Every character has like 14 names. I'm gonna remember one. All right.
That's why I give them titles.
Yeah, the prefect tries to get Geralt to stay out of things, presumably for Geralt's own safety. He doesn't say it outright. He doesn't say, you gotta stay safe, kid. But he is heavily implying, never come to this area of the world again. Like, thank you. I was like, well, it's not Temeria. It's the other one, Kaidwen. Never come here again. Like, you're in danger here. Get out. That doesn't work for Geralt. He immediately says, nope, I'm going to go chase down those guys because fuck them. They ruined my life. So staying out of things for personal safety doesn't seem to work for Geralt either. And then the other thing that Geralt has to learn about is revenge, because like you pointed out in the recap, Nenneca says to Geralt, revenge only brings joy to vapid and primitive minds. Revenge will place you outside the law. So she's basically advising against going out and killing these guys because it's just revenge and that's useless and not good. But then she says, go and kill those fuckers, which to me implies either that she doesn't believe what she just said about revenge, or perhaps she's not seeing killing those riders as part of revenge, but maybe something bigger. I don't know how helpful it really is for us to sit and think, did those people deserve to die? Because I think what ultimately matters more is that in the process of killing those people, as he's going through, when he gets to the last one, he has that moment with the kids and the monster and realizes that there are things that are more important. He sort of realizes, oh, the good thing to do here is not to, seek my revenge on this woman who is responsible for the death of my friend and like tried to kill my other friends at the temple. The good thing to do here is to save these kids from this monster. And it says Geralt didn't look towards the woman, but he suddenly lost interest. Something else was more important, a different choice. And so you're right. It's beyond just, oh, well, my role is to kill monsters, so I'm going to kill the actual monsters and the people monsters. Instead, it's my role is to defend the innocent and do good things. We get this quote of what's inscribed on Preston Holt's swords, which says, my glow will cut through the darkness, my brightness will disperse the gloom. So you're right, the world is dark and grim, but I can still be a force for good through all of that. So it's more complicated than just kill monsters and don't kill people. It's much more about what is the good thing to do here? What is the right thing to do here for the sake of it, not for personal gain or for safety or for revenge or for helping out a buddy of mine so that I can get something later. It's just what's the good thing to do here? And that's a really simple idea, but in practice it's much more complicated. And I think this book sort of helps us understand that a bit better.
I like the way you're questioning that Nenneca moment, because for me, I felt like narratively Sapkowski needed to avoid having her step into the mentor role that Preston Holt had just left.
Yeah.
Where if she gives him a specific piece of advice and steers him in one direction, Geralt needs to make that decision for himself. That needs to be the climactic. Is that the word?
Sure.
That needs to be.
It's our show.
That needs
the ensuing.
I think that needs to be the turning point moment of the book, where at the very end, on the last page, I think he becomes the Geralt that we know and love.
Yes.
That decision can't be made for him by Nenneca, and I think her kind of feeling pulled in both directions is a reminder that this isn't just a prequel for Geralt. This is a prequel for Nenneker too. It's for everyone. Everyone who's a recurring character is at a different point in their lives. I think she would be more principled. I don't think she would, even a little bit, advise him for revenge, in favor of revenge in any of the later books. I think this was a nice nod to, hey, she's walking her own path and she's not who she's going to be yet either.
Right. And I think this also helps us understand why at the beginning of the main Witcher saga, we get a Geralt who stays out of politics. I've always wondered about that. And I think when I first read it, especially early on, I was thinking, oh, he stays out of stuff because he's focused on self-interest. He's focused on, making money, surviving, doesn't get involved in stuff because it doesn't concern him. He stays in his lane. And everything we've just laid out sort of seems to counteract that. So I think Geralt's choice to stay out of things is not out of selfish reasons, but I think it's because there are more important things. And in fact, getting involved makes you personally involved, which is like a problem. It's a conflict of interest. I can't get involved in politics and stuff because I can't be part of this scheming game. I can't get personally invested in what happens to you, this, count, or this, maiden, or this sorceress, or this king, or this prince. Instead, I need to focus on the bigger picture, which is what is the right thing to do. Sometimes that's killing the monster. Sometimes that's eliminating the threat outside of the monster. Sometimes it's doing an underhanded deal to save somebody, but it's not because he's personally involved. It's because he's looking at the bigger picture of what's the right thing to do.
I totally agree. I was wondering, as this book was starting to wrap up, whether this was going to be the beginning of a new prequel series, whether there was more to do within the world of the unseen origins of Geralt of Rivia. And almost on this final page, I decided against that. And I wanted to get your read on this, because one of my little wrap-up questions here was, is this it for Geralt's origin stories? Could there be more here? Is there another book here? Is the Geralt that we have on the last page of this book the same Geralt we start with when we begin The Last Wish? What do you think?
I think so. Well, technically no, because he's much older than this Geralt is. By the end of this book, Geralt's like 19 or something.
But fundamentally,
I think so. I think he is a guy who has sort of ironed out his own Witcher's code, both like morally and professionally, and is a little jaded and gritty based on all of the, unfortunate, negative, and scheming and backhanded interactions that he's had with people. He's feeling probably some grief and anger about the death of Preston Holt, and he's much more, he's got much more finesse and skill as an actual fighter and witcher and negotiator. He's even, evolved through his strategic silence that we talked about last week, and that comes up here again, but not much more. But it continues. So I think pretty much yes. I mean, maybe that's reductive because in the next, I don't know how much longer it goes, 20, 30 years, I'm sure going to change. It's not that he's going to stay exactly the same, but I think pretty much, yeah.
I agree. And I think we talked about something last week of, is this book a speed run of the entire series? Is this the whole story in microcosm? And again, on that last page, I think Sapkowski confirms that it is. And if it wasn't, maybe we do have a little prequel trilogy in the offing here. But I don't think that's what he's doing, because Geralt's decision to ignore the monster, ignore whatever he wants, whatever would satisfy him, and drawing the swords to protect the kids, that feels like the most pointed and poignant nod to Ciri that we've gotten throughout this book.
Yes, I was feeling a lot of Ciri in these very last chapters, partly because of the law of surprise reference, but also, because of not only protecting those kids at the very end, but even before that, when he goes to visit Timur of Warnoff, there are kids around Rockamora. And the second they see Geralt walk in, they and their mother freak out, and the mom brings them back inside because there are all these rumors that witchers take and kill children. And so you see Geralt feeling kind of sad about that. And I don't think it's because he's sad for himself. I think he's sad for the kids. And so you see sort of these, I don't want to say fatherly instincts. That's too intense. But these sort of sympathies towards children and focusing on protecting the innocent, I think are really coming up at the end of the book here. So I think if you bring in the Ciri thing, plus the little nod of, hey, maybe don't get too close to sorceresses. I think you've made us think about all of the key characters and players and themes in this one book.
I think that's maybe the only open question that I still have, because I would love Sapkowski to keep jumping back into this world. And if he does another prequel-y standalone book, I would love it to be almost primarily an exploration of one of Geralt's relationships with women.
Yeah.
Whether it's Yennefer, Triss, someone we haven't heard
Someone
of.
else, yeah.
That is what I would like to see next. Do you have anything on your kind of wish list if Sapkowski comes back again?
I can't remember in the original saga, do we know how he meets Dandelion? Or are they already kind of buddies?
We might.
I can't remember. I remember we get to see him meet Yennefer in the first book.
That might be a short story.
Yeah, I just can't remember at this point. It's been years. But maybe I would like more Dandelion. But honestly, one thing I was thinking about was Vry, the healer sorceress who saves Geralt here at the end. I don't remember her being in the main saga. So I just want to, I could just look this up, I suppose. But I'm wondering if she is one of those, remember there was like those 12 sorcerers who all died up on that hill or something?
Yeah.
I wonder if she's one of them, because I'm wondering why she's not in this story if they got this like established like, co-loyalty with each other. Like I'm surprised that
Sodden Hill?
That's what it was.
Okay.
Good memory. Anyway, so it's like digging away in the Rolodex. But so yeah, I wonder what her ultimate fate is and why she doesn't appear in the main saga if they've got such an important relationship. Because it doesn't seem like there's any. I don't think they have any potential for a romantic or sexual relationship. So I don't think it's like.
Oh, I do.
Really?
I think Geralt has potential for a sexual relationship with pretty much anyone.
I don't feel flirtation between them. And so I don't think that they kind of like quote unquote break up at all. I think something else must happen that they don't continue to be in contact. But I wonder what that is.
Sure.
But that's just kind of me wondering about lore. Again, I could probably look that up. Yeah. I'm sure big time fans are screaming at me. But
we're big time fans and I'm not screaming at you. I think one of the other things we've talked about for the last 2 weeks is experiments in form. And I wanted to just rattle off a few of those that I really admired in this third of the book.
Sure.
One of them was the time jump and the way that Sapkowski he resists a clean recap of what happened in those 6 months. It's fragmented. It's kind of sprinkled through the following few chapters to the point that every time we learn about something that happened within that 6-month blackout period, it feels like a landmine. He weaponizes exposition in a way where it feels like revelation. It doesn't feel like clunky dialogue.
No, I gotta tell you what happened. Yeah, it always is serving, like anytime he tells you anything that's happening, it's serving like 5 functions. Like it's telling you the plot, but it's also telling you about character. It's telling you about themes, and it's helping you understand the plot in the way that the characters understand the plot. It's beautiful.
And it's just a mastery of storytelling in how he does this. One of the other ones is the flurry of dialogue while Geralt is being treated.
Yes, because there's no narration. It's just dialogue. And he's done that before, and I love when he does it because, again, it's having us understand these two characters, these two women, but we're also understanding Geralt because he doesn't quite know what's going on, so he doesn't get narration either. And so he's a little confused and it's a little hazy, and I kind of understand some of the medical things they're doing, and I can see that they're, working with each other, but I don't really know what's going on. Like it's really well done.
I also loved the variable chapter length. Audiobook-wise, some of these chapters were half an hour, and then the last chapter was 5 minutes. And I think keeping that fresh and unexpected is part of why I think his restlessness in form it makes the stories feel so fresh for me, if that makes sense.
Yes,
I continue to be impressed and surprised by him 10 books into the same series.
But I think it also points to a lack of, formularicness in this world.
Formula?
I don't know. Yeah, but I'm saying the world is not formulaic. Whatever. Who gives a fuck? It's my show. The world is not formulaic. And so also the story structure and the chapters are not formulaic. Sometimes it's all dialogue. Sometimes it's all letters and reports. Sometimes we do this really cool thing where we get to really set the tone and atmosphere, and Geralt's in this seedy little bar tavern, and he has learned all the tricks about what are the rituals and sort of behaviors and secret codes that you have to do as this person seeking out a bodyguard role. Like you have to enter and put your sword down and pay for the round. And then it's and then the next town he didn't get anything. Oh, and then the next town he also didn't get anything. He takes his time to lay that out. He just plays around it. It's so much fun.
And anytime he drops what feels like an echo he's going to play with his food. The way the Marchioness is introduced felt so much like Artemon. He was introduced and killed in the same chapter. The second she was introduced and you knew she was a piece of shit and she became even more of a piece of shit, you expected them to meet a similar fate. But he delays that fate. He teases that fate for a few chapters, and then we get that weird nightmare finale to that. I think some of this snowballs into a theory here to almost pull it back to George R. R. Martin, where we spent so much time talking about couplets. I think Crossroads of Ravens is a story of couplets. We have two mentors. We have two sets of swords. We have two missing medallions. We have two attackers that are hunted down at the end of the book. We have two evil old magician-y characters. We have two unexpected origin stories. And, cherry on top, we get a second fight with Estriga.
That's nice.
And every time he closes one of these couplets, it's in an unexpected way. And it pays dividends. It tells you more about the first instance while planting this kind of thesis statement finale on the whole trend.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Just remarkable storytelling.
Yeah, this was a real joy to read. I had so much fun diving back into this world. And there's like a small part of me that's like, should I read the whole story? And like,
I felt that too yesterday.
And like, no, because we're about to read this other book, and but like the story, like I really wonder, and we probably said this at the end of our initial Witcher coverage, like of the whole series. I wonder how the first book would read now that I've read everything else and I know so much more about Geralt's story and the world and all of the, because I'm sure there are like people or places or characters that are mentioned or events that are mentioned offhand in those first few stories that I obviously just didn't know about, and I wonder how much me would go, oh that thing, like I wonder what it's like on a reread.
Yeah, I'm excited. If he comes back with another book, I think we'll be there day one.
Yeah,
this was absolutely fantastic.
So good.
And of course, we'll be back here next week with another glorious return to one of our favorite fantasy authors talking about the Hedge Knight.
But a true grimdark thing. I love the way you laid out or sort of dispelled the grimdark thing here, by the way. I thought that was brilliant.
It will continue to bother me.
Yeah. No, it's not grimdark, and here's why. Listener, what did you think of this part of the book of Crossroads of Ravens, of the book as a whole, of our discussion? Please, we love to keep the conversation and discussion going. It's why we do this on here and not just in our own life. We don't have just our own little book club. We do this widely so we can include as many ideas and perspectives and thoughts as possible. If you're on YouTube, you can just comment below and keep the discussion going down there. If you're listening on a podcast platform, you can send us an email, secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com, or send us a message on Instagram at secondbreakfastpod. Or if you're on our Patreon, which I shouted out earlier, we also post our regular episodes on the Patreon feed, so you can just comment straight down there. Do whatever floats your boat. There are lots of ways to communicate with us.
If you are on YouTube and you've enjoyed this Witcher coverage, the rest of our Witcher coverage is not on YouTube.
Oh, that's right.
It's on the podcast feed. So you can get chapter by chapter through all of the other books, and to tie out all of that coverage, as we've done for Martin and Tolkien before him, we do a retrospective episode, which is reviewing all of our notes that we've done for every book and chapter we've discussed, hitting all of the themes and big ideas from usually about a year and a half of analysis.
Those are so fun to
check
do.
all of that out on the podcast feed.
Yes, please do. Another thing that I recommend you checking out is Lemon Tarts in Space, Cam's latest book. It's a light sci-fi dark comedy. It is Ridley Scott's Alien meets Monty Python. It is Friday the 13th meets Flubber. It is such a fun read. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It'll make you go, huh? It's a really, really fun book.
If you like couplets, there are a lot of them there.
That's true. Also, we shouted out Tristan, friend of the show and our life. Tristan also...
friend of our life.
Tristan stars in the audio drama version of Lemon Tarts in Space, as does Cam. It's a really delightful listening experience. I recommend you check that out as well. The links for all of those things are in the description of this episode. Thank you all very much for supporting the show. If you don't want to contribute financially, that's completely fine. Like, subscribe, etc. Click the stuff to tell us that you like us. And we will, let's see, are we doing anything?
I don't know.
Okay.
We will be back here
we'll be
on
back
Friday
soon.
for a fully encompassing discussion of George R. R. Martin's The Hedge Knight.
Yeah, so you better go read it. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye.